KOAN 1080 AM, 95.1 FM. You're listening to the Joe Miller Show, and we have an exciting lineup today. Our first guest is standing by, Secretary of State Kris Kobach from the state of Kansas. He has an interview with Lou Dobbs going on, I guess, at the bottom of the hour. So we're going to skip the daily news summary and go directly to Kris. Kris Kobach and I have known each other for a while. We went to law school together back on the East Coast. Kris has even had the opportunity to experience the great state of Alaska and the wonderful things it has to offer. I guess we came up empty, right, Kris, on that bear hunt, but you saw the beauty of the state.
We did. Well, great to be on the show with you.
So, Kris, you've been in the news a lot. In fact, I don't know how many different broadcasts I've seen you on over the last week. One of the things that we've hit pretty regularly, not just on the Restoring Liberty website, but also on this program, is the issue of Obama's illegal amnesty. What you've raised to the nation's attention is how that amnesty now is likely to lead to illegal aliens actually voting in U.S. elections. Can you tell us what that's all about?
Yeah. So what the amnesty does, there are two of them. There's one that was in June of 2012. That was the Dreamer version of the amnesty for people who claim they entered the country before the age of 16. You don't have to prove it, just claim it. And then the November 2014 amnesty, which is basically for parents of U.S. citizens and parents of green card holders who are illegal aliens. Combined, those amnesties are about 5.8 million illegal aliens. And what the amnesty does is it gives the illegal alien a kind of a get-out-of-jail-free card. We're not going to deport you card. And more importantly, it gives them a Social Security number and work authorization so they can work in the United States, which is a big deal because with that employment, that Social Security number, you can then, in most states, that's all the documentation you're going to need other than a real basic identity document to register to vote. And as long as you're willing to check the box that says I'm a U.S. citizen and signed the voter registration form, you'll get on the rolls. And one thing we have found in Kansas is that many, many aliens got on our voter rolls before we toughened up our laws because they didn't even know what they were signing. They either couldn't read English, some community organizer handed them a piece of paper to register, and they said, oh, okay, I guess I can do this, and they had no idea what they were signing. Or, in some cases, the person at the DMV who's handling driver's licenses is, doing hundreds and hundreds of licenses a day, and she just, gets in a habit of saying, so would you like to donate an organ, your organs? Would you like to register to vote after every interview? And the alien, thinking that a person from the government has just offered him the chance to register to vote, therefore it must be legal for him to do so. Happens all the time. And
right.
So,
and so, yeah, the motor voter laws across the United States are leading to that. Did you hear about our illegal alien cop that we had in Anchorage? He was found out a couple of years ago. Actually voted, I think. Well, he was actually had a good reputation, served with the Anchorage Police Department for 17, 18 years, voted in virtually every election, and at least to this day, still hasn't been prosecuted for it.
Yeah, it's unfortunately, it rarely gets prosecuted. But, this is not a victimless crime. Every time an alien, legal or illegal, participates in an election, that effectively cancels out the vote of a U.S. citizen, effectively disenfranchises that U.S. citizen. And we have had many cases in Kansas of aliens getting on our voter rolls and voting. Sometimes just, not realizing they're breaking the law, but other times as part of a coordinated effort to steal an election.
So how do you check this? I mean, so we've got all these folk running around now with Social Security cards, work visas. They're participating in the economy. They're involved in our communities. They go in, they register to vote. They get a driver's license. They sign up that way or otherwise. How do you? What is the check that states can implement to ensure that those that have registered in that fashion end up getting weeded out?
Well, there's one thing that states can do, and there are only 4 states that are doing it right now: Kansas, Arizona, Georgia, and Alabama. And that is, a state can require documentary proof of U.S. citizenship at the time you register to vote. And I think every state should be doing it. I'm not going to hold my breath that California ever will. But every state where you have representatives who are trying to protect U.S. citizens' interests should adopt something like Kansas's law requiring proof of citizenship. So we can stop most of these amnesty recipients from getting on our voter rolls. But the Obama administration has not been helpful at all. They've actually been fighting us on this, and they are insisting that even in Kansas, if you use a special federal form to register instead of the state form one normally uses, that you don't have to prove your citizenship. And we're fighting with them in court over that. It's just outrageous that the federal government is impeding our efforts in Kansas and in Arizona and these other states to keep our voter rolls clean.
But come on, Chris. I mean, they're just trying to make sure everybody can vote, right? I mean,
Yeah.
if you put all these requirements down, then, you're going to disenfranchise U.S. citizens too, right?
No, not at all. We really made this law very, very easy for the U.S. citizen. So, for example, if the U.S. citizen registers at a shopping mall or something, it doesn't have his birth certificate, he can go home and take a picture of it with his phone or scan it or send in a photocopy. He can text in his birth certificate. So it's very easy. And if he doesn't have one, we provide free replacement birth certificates for people born in our state. We do all kinds of things to make it easy for the U.S. citizen, but we don't want to make it easy for the non-citizen to get on our voter rolls. And we've had so many examples of it happening in Kansas before we took this step to make our laws stronger. We presented about 20 illegal aliens, or not illegal, but aliens we had identified specifically by name to a federal district court in this case. And then we had another incident a few years back in southwest Kansas where about 50, mostly, aliens, I'm not sure whether they were legal or illegal, but they were working at a meatpacking plant, and they were registered to vote in order to try to steal a hog farming referendum in southwest Kansas. Just outrageous cases of people manipulating aliens in order to steal votes and effectively disenfranchise U.S. citizens.
So have there been any federal court cases that have ruled that demanding proof of U.S. citizenship is unlawful under the U.S. Constitution? No court has ever held that. And the Obama Justice Department hasn't even argued that when they fight against us. They know that they would never win that argument. Even with a liberal judge, they'd have a hard time winning that one. Instead, what they do is they try to argue that, there's this federal form that was created with the motor voter law in 93. And this federal form is controlled by the federal government, and so we, an unelected federal bureaucracy, get to decide what's on that form. And if we say you don't have to prove citizenship, you don't have to prove citizenship. So they're trying to use a statute, misread a statute into blasting a huge loophole in our law. There's another thing the feds could do too. Just, Joe, before we go too far on that, on this, this latest development with these executive amnesties, if Obama's administration was serious about mitigating some of the negative side effects of this executive amnesty, all he has to do, and one of the secretaries of state has already requested this from the White House and has gotten a deafening silence in response. All he has to do is just give us the names, dates of birth, and Social Security numbers of these newly amnestied aliens, and we could just check them against our voter rolls, make sure they're not getting on the rolls. But the White House won't do that. And the reason they won't do that, I believe, is because they don't want the public to learn that they're getting on the voter, that these illegal aliens are getting on the voter rolls, because, some Secretary of State might say, hey, we just knocked 100 names off our voter rolls that were people who were, aliens who got on the rolls through the Obama amnesty. So I'm not holding my breath. I don't think the White House is going to cooperate, and it's a real shame because it's hurting the American citizenry. Right, and it's not just publication about the numbers. It's also, what do you think the motivation of this administration is? You've been doing battle with them now in a number of cases. In fact, you and I have talked about how the Obama administration has restrained, Border Patrol agents from doing their job, actually ordered the release of criminals that have gone on and created mayhem on American streets. What motivates a president to do the type of thing where he's allowing now by his acts, illegal acts, non-citizens to vote, creating inducements for illegals to come into the United States? Do you have any kind of big picture perspective on why Obama is doing what he's doing?
Yeah, I do. And the answer was given originally not by me, but publicly given by Barney Frank, representative congressman from Massachusetts a few years ago. In an interview, he was true to his name and unusually frank, and he was asked why he was so supportive of an amnesty back then. I think it was in '06, and he said, well, the reason is that these voters, these aliens, once they become voters, they get citizenship and then vote. Of course, he was assuming that they'd wait until they were citizens. But once they start voting, they will be permanent voters for the Democrat Party. And then once they're permanent voters for the Democrat Party, they can do all kinds of things with this wonderful voting bloc. And I think that motivates, unfortunately, way too many people on the left. They would like to create a much enlarged dependency class because the vast majority of illegal aliens do not have a high school education, or a few have just that, but very few have more than high school education. They take advantage of the benefits of our very vast welfare state. It's estimated that 71% of illegal alien households are taking advantage of at least one welfare program. And so you have this massive influx of poorer people, and it's not a question of race, it's just pure economics, coming into a welfare state, becoming dependent on that welfare state, and that magnifies the power of the party that provides the goodies, in this case, the Democrat Party. And I think Barney Frank laid the cards on the table, and we see what the results are. And this is just one manifestation of it.
And in fact, I mean, what they're doing, of course, today just provides further inducement for more of this to happen in the future. There's an expectation that, hey, we do this the wrong way, we go across the border, eventually we'll get the benefits. And there are many, many other things, too. I mean, I'm sure that you could give us a litany of the educational benefits, the medical benefits. I have a son-in-law that is a Mexican national that hasn't been able to come across, trying to wait and do it the right way instead of getting in the back of the trunk of a car and coming across the border, sneaking across. Yeah. And it just he when I talk to him, he says, "What's up with this? I mean, you're letting all these people who blatantly broke your law to come in and enjoy the benefits of the United States, and I try to do it the right way, and where am I? I'm still back, 2 years from my visa."
Yeah, it's a huge slap in the face to people like your son-in-law who are trying to do it legally. And, there's another aspect of this, Joe, that people need to be aware of. So last week I testified in Congress on this issue of these amnestied illegal aliens getting on our voter rolls. There was another congressional hearing last week in which John Koskinen, the IRS commissioner, was asked, are these illegal aliens who get this amnesty, are they going to be able to claim basically federal welfare under the Earned Income Tax Credit? And he said yes. Not only are they going to be able to get it this year, they can claw back and get three back years worth of 3 years in the past worth of Earned Income Tax Credit, and that's roughly $6,000 a year. So you're talking about an illegal alien who gets a get out of jail free card and up to $24,000 of wealth transfer. And this is not a reduction in the taxes he paid. This is a transfer from the U.S. government to him, courtesy of you and me, of $24,000. We're giving these people a jackpot and an amnesty.
Mind-boggling, absolutely mind-boggling. I had no idea that came out in the hearing that you participated in. We put up a story about it. Our readers were absolutely outraged, as they should be. And this is really the deconstruction of a nation. I mean, if you've got a country that doesn't protect its borders, doesn't protect the integrity of its people, what do we become? One of the points that I made in the 2014 election was that when we water down immigration, when we allow the illegal aliens to come in and become citizens, we can't help but have an impact on certain things that, like, for example, the Second Amendment. And this is, again, going back to our family connection. I talked to my son-in-law. There's no concept of the Second Amendment in Mexico. I mean, people don't have the right to have guns. They don't understand the constitutional right here. And it really, when you introduce, 10 to 20 million, and of course, now we're talking about how many million, according to the amnesty that the president has done.
Another 5.8 million,
I mean, that's going to have an impact, especially where you have marginal votes, especially where you're talking about jurisdictions. There are all sorts of impacts that this is going to have to what we consider to be the proper direction of a country. And people don't seem to understand that. A lot of people react with sympathy and empathy.
But, you have to remember that, and people might initially, their first impulse might be sympathy and empathy. Well, gosh, this illegal alien really tried hard to get across the border and took some risks, and they're really working hard here. Let's remember that there are, depending on how you define it, there are about 25 million Americans unemployed or underemployed or who have stopped looking for work because they couldn't find jobs. And we have this horrible combination right now of an overly generous welfare state that decreases the incentives for Americans to work and an open border and an amnesty giving executive branch that is encouraging illegal aliens to come in and take those jobs. And just to put icing on the cake, giving them up to $24,000 in a federal jackpot if they take that amnesty. I mean,
unreal.
It's outrageous, and it's the economic damage it's doing to our country is incredible. You've touched on some of the cultural implications. If massively bring in so many aliens, this is our nation has never had this happen before. We have never had this high a percentage of aliens coming in so fast, legal and illegal, in any period of our country's history. And when we did have massive influxes in the past, legally, of course, there was always a lull. And there's a great book on this by Samuel Huntington called Who Are We? And during that lull, we were able to assimilate and bring American values and the American creed and the American concepts of our Constitution and the rule of law so that the new populations could become assimilated and Americanized. That's not happening anymore. The numbers are so massive. Our schools aren't pushing American culture and our American creed anymore. And so we're not Americanizing people. So you have the economic damage and you have the cultural damage, too. And it doesn't look good for our country.
It doesn't, and now is the time to draw the line in the sand before it's too late. You mentioned the unemployment issue. It's amazing to me. There was an article that came out a few months ago that suggested the illegal aliens actually have a lower unemployment rate than white male Americans. I'm not sure. I didn't go down to the nitty-gritty on it, but still there is no question that there's displacement of American workers by these illegal aliens that come in. It doesn't seem like the ruling class gives much care about it. But the fact is that red-blooded Americans should. It's time to draw a line in the sand. What's the action plan, Chris? What do we do?
Well, a couple of things. One is that some states are pushing back. They're telling the Obama administration, we don't recognize the validity of your executive amnesty. Kansas has a bill that's pending. There are about a dozen states, mostly in the Midwest and South. I hope Alaska will take up the cause, too. It's Kansas Senate Bill 166, if any Alaska legislator is listening. It basically says, look, we don't recognize the validity of this amnesty. We will not be giving driver's licenses or recognizing the work authorization of these aliens. Another thing is we've got to hold our Congress, our members of Congress feet to the fire, make sure they stand firm and try to defund this amnesty. And then the third thing we can do is fight it in the courts. And I'm involved representing 10 ICE agents in a case in the Fifth Circuit right now. So trying to do everything we can, but we have got an executive branch that is out of control right now, and our Constitution is suffering.
Well, Chris, I appreciate all that you're doing. You're a warrior in this battle. I've followed you for a long time. Keep up the good work. Love to have you come back and update us from time to time, and appreciate you taking the time before Lou Dobbs today to be on our show.
My pleasure. Take care, Jeff.